Life often imitates art when it comes to film, as demonstrated by the long list of horror movies with cursed sets. Thankfully, we won't be talking about the various deaths and injuries that have occurred whilst filming spooky movies over the years. Instead, let's talk about some of the more light-hearted mess-ups in horror history, the ones that were so easily overcome that directors just chose to leave them in. It's testament to the cast involved in these movies that they were able to power through when everything around them was falling to pieces. In some cases, they acted so well that you wouldn't even notice that there had been an error. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with 10 horror movie mistakes directors refused to fix because the acting was too good. Number 10. You hit me with the phone in Scream. Phones play a pretty big part in Wes Craven's satirical triumph Scream. The very first scene we get from the movie involves one as Casey Becker first meets Ghostface. The device also comes into play during the movie's most famous accident-prone moment. Towards the film's thrilling climax, Sidney Prescott turns the tables on killers Billy and Stu, taunting them in much the same way they taunted her. She is on the phone with a bloodied Stu as Billy goes mad behind him. Billy grabs the phone from Stu, screams at Sidney, and then throws it back at his accomplice. However, because of all the fake blood, the headset got stuck to his hand and then flung off right into the back of Matthew Lillard's head. Like an absolute pro, the victim of this phone-based assault carried on with a quiet "ow" before yelling, "You hit me with the phone!" Although to keep this PG, we've left out 2 words from that section of dialogue. Number 9. An expensive error in Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. There are many questions surrounding the 1997 horror parody movie Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, the major one being, why? Why did anyone think this would be a good idea? Because it's schlocky, self-aware goodness, that's why. Director John DeBello must have thought, why is this happening to me, when a stunt during filming went very wrong? Whilst filming a scene where a helicopter was supposed to land in the background, the whirlybird lost control and slammed into the ground. Thankfully, no one was seriously hurt, but the low-budget film's bank balance took a hefty hit as the chopper was valued at $60,000. However, because everyone just sort of went with it, footage from the smash ended up in the film itself. That and because there was no chance they could get the money for another helicopter. The script was changed so that one of the eponymous mutant foodstuffs took the aircraft down, and the close-ups of the cast members watching the crash are nothing short of hilarious. If this accident was going to happen on any film set, this was probably one of the better ones. Number 8. The moving hump in Young Frankenstein. Mel Brooks is a very silly man. You don't get to pen such comedy classics as Blazing Saddles, The Producers and Spaceballs by taking yourself too seriously. His comedy horror Young Frankenstein is no different, a much more light-hearted version of the classic Mary Shelley tale, with Gene Wilder as the mad scientist and a rendition of Putting on the Ritz that will leave you in stitches. See what we did there? One of the many funny parts of this film is Igor, the Doctor's disfigured assistant as played by Marty Feldman. As well as his many great lines, Igor also offers up some physical comedy in the form of an ever-changing hump in his back. Feldman had been moving the prosthetic around to different places on his body for days until the crew caught on. Something that would have derailed any other production actually added to the bizarre hilarity of Young Frankenstein, and so Brooks made the call to leave it in. It's exactly the sort of ridiculous humour that the writer is known for, so it's surprising to find out that it wasn't his idea in the first place. Imagine if he hadn't liked it. Number 7. A shocking oversight in The Thing. One of the many great jump scares in John Carpenter's The Thing comes when Camp Dr. Copper attempts to restart the heart of geologist Norris. You sure picked a great time to have a heart attack, didn't you, Norris? As the physician goes to defibrillate his co-worker, he gets quite the shock when his chest opens up to form a giant gaping mouth. This shock only gets bigger when said mouth rips his arms off, killing him instantly. Talk about an accident in the workplace. It turns out that Norris was infected by the titular Thing, leading to Kurt Russell's MacReady incinerating the monster before it can harm anyone else. Spoiler, it harms a lot more people. The residents of the research station were actually lucky not to have been in a real emergency, as Dr. Copper was actually a complete fool. When he tries to defib Norris, he goes to shock his stomach rather than his chest. This is clearly because the prosthetics for the creature had to be fitted into Norris's stomach, but thankfully nobody really cares about this medical infraction, as this scene is just so damn iconic. Number 6. Who's That in the Ring? In terms of English language remakes of foreign language horrors, you can't do much better than 2002's The Ring. This fabled tale of a haunted videotape scared the living conkers off us all and has made everyone fearful of little girls with long black hair ever since. Plenty of creepy things happen in The Ring, of course they do, it's The Ring, but one of the low-key creepiest might have happened by happy accident. Naomi Watts' Rachel goes with her ex-boyfriend to collect her cursed son Aidan from her sister's house. As they are about to leave, for the briefest of brief moments, a shadowy figure can be seen lurking in the doorway behind them. Is this Rachel's sister? Is it an apparition caused by the haunted tape? Is it an overly keen pizza delivery driver? We can't say for sure, but in all likelihood, it's a crew member who walked into shot by mistake. Thankfully, none of the cast seem to notice or care that this person is there, and their shadowy frame only serves to heighten the tension of what is an already buttock-clenching experience. Number 5. Right in the face in The Exorcist. Watching The Exorcist is never usually a fun experience, so imagine how bad it must have been making the damn thing. Of course, the opportunity to be part of one of horror's greatest institutions is nothing to sniff at, but the actors in the film had to endure some pretty frightening and disgusting stuff, especially Jason Miller, the man who played Father Karras. Tasked with removing the evil entity inside of little Reagan McNeil, Father Karras communes with the demon as the young girl acts as a conduit. During one famous scene, Pazuzu lures the man of the cloth into a false sense of security before spewing horrible green vomit directly into his godly visage. Miller had been told that the fake spew, which was really coloured porridge, would hit him in the chest. However, when the cameras were rolling for real, the gloop was aimed a little higher. The actor's reaction was completely genuine, which was just one of the many ways the cast of this film were tortured in the name of art. Number 4. A nightmare to film in A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a well-known fact that Johnny Depp is in the first Nightmare on Elm Street film, but what isn't such common knowledge is just how difficult it was to film his death scene. Playing Glenn Lance, the boyfriend of lead character Nancy Thompson, Depp makes the number one mistake in this franchise and takes a nap. He is then pulled through his bed as a geyser of blood shoots up onto the ceiling in a truly stunning visual. Stunning, but also tricky as hell. To get the shot required, the scene was filmed in a rotating room, and the fake blood was poured in from the top to appear like it was shooting out from the bottom. Unfortunately, this water-based solution ended up electrocuting a crew member when it landed directly on a lamp. Then, because the fake blood was so heavy, it made the room tip round, making things much trippier than the crew had originally envisioned. Huge congrats to Depp and Sandy Lipton, who played his character's mother, for managing to power through such a chaotic scene. Glenn's death is really well acted, as are his mother's harrowing screams. Oh, and the guy who got electrocuted was fine, in case you were wondering. Number 3. Merman malfunction in The Cabin in the Woods. Drew Goddard's The Cabin in the Woods ends with a giant hand shooting out of the earth to initiate the apocalypse. This is what we call in the business going over the top, and it turns out that excess is hardwired into this movie's DNA. During one of the highlights of the film, the part where all the cage monsters escape and run rampant throughout the facility, technician Steve Hadley meets his horrifying end. After banging on all movie about wanting to see the merman in action, Hadley ends up getting eaten alive by, you guessed it, the merman. How exciting for him! In a really nice visual, the merman starts ejecting Hadley's blood via its blowhole, and then it keeps ejecting, and ejecting, and ejecting. What had happened was the pump inside the prop had broken, causing it to spew the red viscous liquid continuously. It was only when the fake blood tank started to run out that the crew finally intervened. This blunder was so gory and so in keeping with the film's mad nature that it was kept in the final cut. Feel sorry for whoever had to mop those floors though. Number 2. The Impossible Hotel in The Shining. We've talked a lot about the difficult on-set conditions faced by actors in this list so far, and now Stanley Kubrick is here. Terrific! The auteur famously made life hell for his stars during the filming of the phenomenal 1980 version of The Shining. Poor Shelley Duvall suffered so badly that her hair started to fall out. It wasn't just those in the film that Kubrick relentlessly messed with, it was us at home too. One of the most subtle bits of mind-bendery that Stan employed was to leave several mistakes scattered throughout the layout of the Overlook Hotel. For example, when young Danny is playing in the hotel hallway, the patterns on the carpet change mid-scene. Also, when we first meet its manager, we see that his office has a window in it. This despite the fact that the room is in the middle of the hotel. None of this really matters because these errors were actually left in on purpose. They were designed to make the actors and the audience feel disorientated and to add to the otherworldly nature of the space. Number 1. Most of it, to be honest, in Jaws. Jaws might be one of the most important films in popular cinematic history, but it was a bloody pain in the arse to make. Because young Steven Spielberg was an absolute nutter, he insisted on filming the movie's ocean sequences on the actual ocean. Now, the ocean is not known as a particularly helpful entity, as Steve found out firsthand. The Big Blue went to town on this production, wreaking particular havoc on the several mechanical sharks the crew were using to simulate the film's villain. They broke down, they got rusty, they got tangled up in seaweed. It honestly would have been easier and safer to use a real shark. As a result, for most of the movie, Bruce, the shark's nickname, is barely seen, merely hinted at underwater. Not only did this create some incredible suspense, but it also drew excellent performances out of the actors. Turns out, you can act a whole lot better when you're not looking at a beat-up rubber fish. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then do let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.